Hi, friends. Welcome to the Web3 Women in Web3 interview series. I'm your host, Alex, and I'm the community manager for CharmVerse. CharmVerse is a Web3 operations platform handling docs, tasks, bounties, and proposals. It's a place for team contributors to coordinate day-to-day work, sign in with crypto wallets, and unlock workspaces with tokens and NFTs. It brings together onboarding, bounty management, proposals, project trackers, and data repositories all in one place. I use CharmVerse daily for my workflow, and I suggest you do the same. CharmVerse is the sponsor of our Women in Web3 series, and the point of this series is to feature and promote badass women in Web3. That being said, today we're talking to Bridget Hearst, Content Marketing Manager of Stardust, and we'll be discussing her experience as a woman in Web3, as well as Stardust's role in gaming going Web3. Bridget, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Of course. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. It's been a few weeks since I saw you at NFT NYC, and I believe you had a vacation after that.
Yes, I went to France the week after NFT NYC. I went to France for a bachelorette party, and then I did a quick stop off in Spain, which I had never been to, which was really fun.
That's amazing. I love that. I'm very jealous. It was probably just what you needed after NFT NYC.
Honestly, I was never in a single place for more than like 40 hours. So I needed a vacation from my vacation, but it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you had a little downtime and have been enjoying your summer since you got back.
Absolutely.
Good.
Definitely been having downtime.
Well, good. I'm glad. Take all you can. So again, we met at NFT NYC in June at a gallery where Stardust was hosting a number of events throughout the week. There was an NFT gallery. There were local artists creating in real time, panels of founders and change makers in this space, etc. It was so great. I actually started and ended my conference at your gallery.
I didn't know that. That's amazing, though. That was the bookend to your NFT NYC experience.
It was, and it felt complete. The fact that I met you on the first day and I said goodbye to you on the last day, so it was lovely. Were you able to get out and go to other events, or did you kind of have to be stationed at the gallery for the week?
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm learning generally, in this space, when you have these conferences and you're hosting events at these conferences, a lot of your focus and attention goes there. And I think we had 6 different events over the span of 3 days. Some of them were, parties or panels. And so a lot of my focus was there. But I did end up getting to go to 2 side events that I targeted very, very specifically. And I was able to go to Ape Fest on the Monday night before NFT NYC really, really kicked off, which was, for me, it was more of a curiosity thing of what is this going to be like?
What was it?
So Ape Fest was the festival for Bored Apes,
Yep.
Bored Ape Yacht Club. They rented out Pier 17 in New York City, and they threw this massive, massive event, and they did one, I think it was like a 5-day long event where you can only go to one night, but it was sort of a similar setup each night. And the square footage of the space that they had was just, can only imagine what their budget was. And they had there was food and drinks upstairs. And I believe that Justin Bieber was supposed to play, but he had that thing happen to his face.
Right.
What I can't remember
is it like Bell's palsy or something?
What it was something along the lines of that. So he didn't end up performing, but the night I was there, I got to see LCD Sound System and Questlove.
Cool.
So it was kind of just like a big party on a roof. And then the other event that I got to go to was Disco, Disco.xyz. They were doing a women in Web3 dinner, and I got to go to just one dinner. So those are the 2 events I got to go to outside of Stardust.
Well, events. I guess if you get to escape at all, those sound like really fun events to go to.
They were very fun. They were very, very fun.
Well, Stardust, like I said, had great events. I was really happy to be able to go to some of the panels, check out the artwork, and it was really well run. So well done.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
even though you didn't get to go out too much, do you have tips for other Web3 conference goers, specifically women? I just feel like talking to people about conferences is everyone could use those tips.
Oh, especially when it feels like there's a new one every week.
Yes.
It's like which one to go to and why to go to one. So I have a couple tips I think that I would recommend. So the first tip is get involved with some all women groups, or just any groups that you can get involved in. Because what's going on with those groups is a lot of people are talking about events that are happening. They will A lot of them start on Discord, or there'll be Telegram groups, and people will be saying what they're going to. There's Excel sheets that are sent out that will basically break down every single event um, at the conference, every side event, every panel, and yeah, literally everything. There's multiple of these going around. They're usually a lot of overlap, but you just have to get on a group that is sending those out so you can see what's going on. And one of the cool things that I had when I was going to Ape Fest was I didn't know anybody going, and I was going by myself, and walking into a massive event like that by yourself, you always have the thought, who am I going to talk to? Who am I going to hang out with? Then talk to some strangers. But I was able to actually use one of those Telegram groups and just ask, hey, who's going to this? And within 5 minutes, I found like 6 people that were there, and I was able to have a built-in like system of people I could go talk to, which was really, really helpful, especially when you're going to these, it can be very, very overwhelming with all the side events and the conferences and just where to go if you're going to know people there. So the groups that I use are Boys Club. And then I used Women Down, and there was another Telegram group that got thrown around in one of those Discord channels that was basically it was like NFT NYC, and it had like 15,000 people on it or something.
Oh,
It was a lot of, yeah, it was wild, but it was a lot of information, a lot of Telegram notifications. But it was, yeah, so that would be my first thing. But before that, what I would also recommend is look at why you're going to one of these conferences. Is it to network? Is it because you want to get a job in Web3? Is it because you want to find like-minded individuals? Are you looking for investment? What is the reason for going to these conferences? And one of our head of talent, Ben at Stardust, he wrote an article on a candidate's cheat sheet to conferences, and he sort of like broke down how to kind of simplify. And I think this guide that he created can be very, very useful for not just, he did an NFT NYC edition. It doesn't have to just be for NFT NYC, but I think looking at why you're going to a conference, and what you want to get out of it, and saving time to schedule coffees with people, because obviously things always, I feel like this is just true of life. Everything in life, the greatest things are always the spontaneous moments that you don't have planned out.
yes.
So be strategic, be prepared, but also leave room for, spontaneity. You might meet somebody in line somewhere. You might meet somebody in a gallery. You never know what's going to happen and where it could lead. So, but knowing what your goal is, so that when you're going home from a conference, you can sit down and be like, I accomplished my goal, or I got what I wanted out of it. I think that's really, really important going into all these conferences.
I think that's a really good point, the why, because you can definitely end up at events that don't really pertain to you or your like direct field in this space.
Absolutely.
I think that's
Absolutely.
great. And I totally agree. I looked at a lot of those Excel sheets that were out there and focused a lot of my week around female focused events, and met so many amazing women, you being one of them, that I was able to connect with. And the other note of have a buddy at some of these events, because it really can be intimidating, especially when you're talking about 15,000 people or whatever showing up somewhere. Having a buddy to go, so you just at least can tag team, and not just be alone on it. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great tips. And I love that idea of the cheat sheet. I'm going to be reaching out about that because I think it's just really helpful to have these insider tips for these conferences. And I always like hearing how others navigate their conference experience.
The other thing that I think you get a lot with conferences too is people just try to do too much and they exhaust themselves. So that's the other part of being strategic, is knowing that by day 4 you're going to be exhausted. And then also looking at the geography. I know, for at least for NFT NYC, the events were all over the city.
Yeah,
And also looking at strategically of like, okay, if I stay within this area, I can hit these 3 events, and looking at things geographically so you can maximize your time.
absolutely. That's a good point. NFT NYC was very spread out. I spent a lot of time on trains and just going uptown, downtown, just everywhere. I was definitely exhausted by the end of that week.
Yes, I think anyone that went was just wiped.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how you jumped into, in quotes, a vacation after that. But yeah, you must have been exhausted after those 2 full weeks.
Oh,
Um,
yes, I was. I paid for it. My body was like, you need to sleep for like 24 hours straight now. Thank you.
at least, yeah. So let's start talking about gaming a bit. And full transparency, I'm not much of a gamer, so this will be educational for me. But how does Web3, in your opinion, change the face of gaming as we know it, like up until recently?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to start with one of my favorite examples here. And the like this example is sort of the reason that we're all talking about any of this. So Vitalik Buterin, who created Ethereum, he was an avid World of Warcraft player, and he would spend hours and hours in game. And he woke up one day, and the developers had just arbitrarily decided to weaken his prized character's spell casting abilities.
What?
Yeah, so what that means was he had spent hours playing a game, unlocking achievements,
Yeah.
and then he woke up one day and those achievements were just basically taken from him with no warning, with no reasoning, and he never got them back.
BS. I call BS.
That happens a lot though in the gaming world, where if a developer decides to pull the game, if a developer makes an update to something, and that's like a very, very common narrative that gamers have been experiencing for years and years and years.
So
But
frustrating.
yeah, but so the story goes that Vitalik cried himself to sleep that night, and then he realized the horrors that centralized services can bring. And that was how we came up with the idea for Ethereum. And Ethereum is what everything is functionally was kind of built upon Ethereum, where you have your L1s and your L2s. That a lot of things are, NFTs take place on, started on the Ethereum network. And so when where blockchain really comes in with gaming was, if a game is built with blockchain technology, then any asset that a player earns or purchases actually belongs to that player. That notion of that qualities and characteristics of his character were taken from him, that if he had earned, a sword or whatever it might have been, that can't be taken from you, that it's yours. And this notion has not existed in gaming yet players will sort of, from an emotional standpoint, there's a big sense of pride and ownership, and that asset is theirs. But it hasn't been. It's been at the mercy of the game developer.
Wow.
So that's sort of, what's really so. And then the other thing with gaming and Web3 is that for years, gaming has had ecosystems where you go into a game, you either play the game and you get currency in game, or you can purchase items in game where you like hook your credit card up. So this system of being able to pay money for an item that you quote unquote own has been familiar for gamers for years. And what blockchain technology enables us to do in games is, you can no longer, it no longer just has to be that asset is stuck within the world of the game. That asset is yours forever if you want it, or if you want to resell it, you can, resell it for real money that you can use to whatever it might be you want to do in your life. If it's just for a little extra cash. And that's like a really new concept that, this ecosystem of what's been existing within gaming has been closed, and now it can be open.
Whoa.
That's the coolest thing about it.
Yeah. Game changer, if you'll allow me to be that cheesy.
Right.
No, that's really cool that it's opening up this whole new world for gaming and ownership. And yeah, that's really neat.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So blockchain's really changing things up from the gamer's perspective then.
Yes. And, kind of just going back to that thing of that a player can now own things and truly own them. And they can be rewarded for their time spent in a game. They can be rewarded for being, a loyal player or an early adopter. There's a different set of possibilities now that we have because of blockchain. And it really benefits the players more than anybody else.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. So, and Stardust is helping game developers, obviously in all sorts of ways, but now to integrate NFTs into their games, right?
Yeah. So, Stardust enables game developers to seamlessly integrate an NFT into their games. And what our whole mission is that, we focus on the Web3 elements and make it as easy as possible for game developers so that they can focus on what they do best, which is making great games. And what's super cool about our technology is you can integrate with our API in under 3 lines of code, which is very simple, very easy, which makes it a very scalable solution.
Yeah, they must be loving that.
Yes, that is what we're finding. There is a need for that.
Yeah, absolutely. How did that project, how did Stardust come about?
So how it started was our founder and CEO, Kanan Linder, he founded Stardust in 2018. But his whole journey into Web3 started was he looked to buy a crypto kitty. And he's an engineer, mind you. He is very, very proficient with computers. And so he goes through this whole process of trying to buy a crypto kitty, and it was so confusing and so complex. And he just was like, this is wild that this is the only way to do this. And so, he decided to start a company that would make Web3 easy to use, and we're continuing to grow upon that.
I love that. Hey, if it's not there or it doesn't work, just build it yourself, right?
Exactly.
As long as you have those skills, which I don't. But how did you end up in Web3 and then in turn as the content marketing manager for Stardust?
So mine is a very interesting, road into Web3. So I was a commercial line producer. And I was a commercial line producer until January, and I was sitting at brunch with one of my friends, who's been in the space since about 2017. And we were talking, and she started explaining to me this whole notion of Web3. I had never heard the term until, January of this year. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to learn everything I can about this. And obviously there's like the draw with crypto and NFTs, and kind of seeing how much that market was just blowing up and how much money people were making. And I was like, okay, there's definitely something here, but what's this notion of Web3? And that was what really pulled me in. So she sent me a Discord group or an invitation for this Discord group called Boys Club. And what Boys Club is it's a group of, it's women. It's run by women for women, and it's looking to onboard the next 1 million females into Web3. And it's just a place that you can go where you can ask questions. They have a mentorship program now where you can get partnered up with somebody that's a veteran in the space, so you can kind of have a wing woman as you go through all this. And so that was my first, the first place I got into Web3. And so I had a week off of work, which is in commercial production. You're freelance, and around Christmas time, New Year's, things tend to be slow. So I had a week off, and I basically would spend 16 hours a day consuming as much information as I could on Web3 and crypto and blockchain. And then after that first week, on the Boys Club Discord channel, there's an opportunity section where somebody posted a job for Stardust. And I had sort of been looking at the opportunities, being like, I don't know how I fit in here, because I definitely not coming from a traditional tech background. and there was the Stardust posting for the content marketing manager. And I reached out to the girl Tatum, who's the head of success, customer success at Stardust, and I said, "Hey, I come from a different background, but I'm really interested in this role. Like, here's sort of what I've done in commercial production. Like, let me know if I'd be like of interest." And she got back to me and said, she goes, "Actually, our VP of marketing would love to speak with you." So then I get on the call with Bina Shaw, who's the VP of marketing at Stardust. And about 30 minutes, we had a 30-minute interview. And I just remember talking to her and just having this thought of, I need to work with her. I need to work with her. The way that the conversation we had, I was like, I have to do this. And then at the end of the the conversation, she asked me to give a writing sample on the difference between a fungible and non-fungible token in under 300 words. And so I got to take my week of learning, put it to the test, and be able and write an article about it. And that was how I got into Web3. I ended up getting the job. But yeah, that was how I got started.
Cool. I love hearing the stories of how people landed in Web3, and oftentimes it's a random story like that where people just kind of go down the rabbit hole that is Web3, get super interested, super invested, and then bam, there they are in this new role, learning this whole new world.
Absolutely.
And Boys Club, what a great way to start your Web3 experience.
Yeah, so mine was a very like female forward onboarding experience into Web3.
I love it. I love all these projects that are coming about, that are working to empower women in this space, and it's just great and really encouraging to see. And Beanish, is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Yeah, I saw a panel at the Stardust Gallery that she was sitting in on, and I admire her. She has this amazing career path, and I think we'll probably end up talking about her when we talk about your team a little later on. But yeah, she's an incredible woman. So we'll table that for the moment, but we'll definitely come back to it because I think she's worth getting a shout out for sure.
Absolutely.
But back to your writing, because this was so cool when we met, and I definitely went and checked it out. Let's tell our listeners some of the, as you call it, crypto basics that you write about.
Yeah. So one of the approach that I took in that article for my that was part of my interview process was, how can I explain these high level concepts to my mother, who I think is actually on this call. So hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
And I wanted to be able to take these terms and distill them down in a way that anybody could understand. Because if I was, so when in my onboarding or my kind of like deep dive into Web3, all the information's there. Anybody's welcome to listen to it. But the way that people are talking about things, the language is very, very crypto native.
Yes.
And it's not super inclusive to newcomers, just from a language standpoint. Even though the space is very inclusive to newcomers, the language isn't. And if you look at what's going to get Web3 to mass adoption, it's mass usage of making people understand this, or the technology gets so good that they don't need to understand what's going on. And so that was sort of the approach with the crypto basics section is, as we're talking about these concepts, one section of the blog that can stand as a place for people to go that, the whole thing again is like, I'm trying to not ever explain anything in more than 400 words. And if I can't explain it in 400 words, there's a better way to say it, or there's a better example to make it make sense. And so that was sort of this, the notion for this crypto basics section is, as we're a company, we're talking about all these high level things for people that are, that might have just found us, or for people that, don't understand what's going on in the space. We want to just break it down in a simple way so that people can feel like they understand it. And that was sort of the background behind the crypto basics section.
I will testify that you're crushing it, because we talked about that the first day we met, and I definitely went and checked it out that night. And it's great writing, and you really are breaking down these complex topics in a clear and concise way. And no offense to your mother, but I think when we spoke, you said for your grandmother, even you could break it down. And
Yes.
and
For anybody.
for anybody. And it's so important. I remember when I first started to get into this space, all the jargon that's being thrown around, it's like a whole different language.
It really is.
Um, it's like teens these days texting, like I would have no idea what they're saying.
I feel like I hear a new term every day
you can't keep up.
where yeah, you just can't keep up and you're like, okay. And I spend so much of my time researching and writing on this and it's like, okay, here's a new one. Let's go.
Yeah, I feel like it never feel like you're up to speed because you're not, because there's always something new changing, whether it's terminology or just the space itself and new innovations. So I very much appreciate the work you're doing out there and have definitely referenced your blog a number of times. So thank you for that. Yeah.
I appreciate that. It's always good. It's always good to hear that the message of why I'm doing it and that the content is coming across.
It is. It is. So back to Stardust. What would you say makes Stardust stand apart from other projects that have similar objectives?
So I think the one thing with Stardust, or well, we have two things really, is our tech is pretty phenomenal. Our scalability infrastructure solution that makes everything so easy for people to build on blockchain is really kind of the crux of it. But we also have, a couple other cool things that we've been able to do is um, with so with minting NFTs, a lot of things with, a chain can go down or there's really high gas fees. We've all heard about a lot of these things in the news. But so we were able to make history with a partner of ours, Midnight Society and Polygon, the chain, where we minted over 400,000 NFTs in under 17 hours.
Whoa.
And nobody, let me put an asterisk before this, that we are aware of. Nobody's come close to that. And so that's really exciting that we can mint at mass quantities and faster than other people out there. And then also one of the other things that sometimes, as is technology is, it's very much in its infancy and it's sort of still figuring a lot of things out. Sometimes a chain will go down. And what's super cool with us also is that if a chain goes down, you can still mint on that chain through our API. It doesn't impact, which is, so we have those are pretty phenomenal that we have the ability to do that.
Like a fail safe.
Yes, like a fail safe. And, so I think that's kind of, the scalability that we have in the infrastructure and, it allows us to do those things, which is pretty cool. And then the other thing I think that's really, really important to what makes us different is our team. And our COO, Atif Khan, wrote an article on how to build a world-class team. And if anybody listening wants to go to our site, it's stardust.gg, but our blog site is gameon.stardust.gg. And you can go see the articles for the candidate cheat sheet is under the working in Web3 section, and this one is under market updates. But basically, this one is, Atif broke down the hiring philosophy that led to how the team was hired. And so he goes into much more like depth there, but the result of that hiring philosophy has just created such an amazing team. Really, really like wonderful, wonderful human beings that are all incredibly humble and smart and driven and talented and just trying to make the metaverse a reality every single day.
Well, that's amazing. And it sounds like you're really innovating over there at Stardust. And speaking highly of the team you have speaks volumes. And just the couple of people I met, Jared was really kind when I met him at the gallery. Beanish on the panels, who I don't know personally, but just that small sampling is impressive.
Yeah.
So tell me more about your team at Stardust. Who else are you working with over there?
So the really cool thing with any startups is that you actually get to interact with a lot of different parts of the business where normally, a very like massive company marketing might not like interact with technology, the tech side as much, like the engineering side. And, I get to, for a lot of the articles on the blog, I get to, not only write myself, but I also get to work with contributing writers. And when I'm talking about the blockchain in the crypto basics section, if I'm talking about something that's involving blockchain technology and explaining it, I'll actually fact check with a blockchain dev and make sure that I'm not diluting it too much that's taking away from what it is, or if I need to build upon it. And so I actually have a lot of conversations with the blockchain team um, about that, which is actually really, really exciting. And, I've, and then for the marketing team specifically at Stardust, we have who I work with most often is, we have Beanish, who's our VP of marketing, who cannot speak highly enough of. And you have Jared Hatch, who does our experiential and events.
He's the one I met, right?
He's the one you met. He is also phenomenal. Where his ability to just meticulously think out every single detail of what's going into something is just so amazing. And he really creates these like beautiful, immersive experiences that also like drive results for the business. They're all very, very strategic of how and why he's doing everything. Then we just brought on Steph Vong for our senior partner marketer. She's been here for I think it's like 3 weeks now, so she's I'm sure getting very, very overwhelmed with all the Web3 terms she needs to learn. And then we also have Katie Metz, who's doing all our visual design. And I just feel really, really grateful to get to work with, not only the whole team at large, but also just like a smaller marketing team.
Yeah.
We get a lot done and have a good time doing it.
Oh, that's great. I mean, that's a huge part of, we put so much of ourselves into work that it's so important to have a great team to work with day to day. I feel that at CharmVerse for sure. And yeah, just a shout out to our dev team, like doing stuff that I have no idea about, but they're always there to answer questions. And it's just great to have that insight into the back end of the operation. That's very much not my side of things, but yeah, so having a strong team, here, I feel that. I love it.
And I think the thing that's so amazing about this space also that, we really have at Stardust is if you have a question, anyone's willing to answer it for you. Anyone's willing to help you learn.
Yeah.
Which is I think, yeah, which seems to be the thread within Web3.
It does. It does. I was really happy to find that when I jumped into Web3, because it really seems like an intimidating space, but everyone's been so helpful and kind. It's been really encouraging. I really like that about it.
I completely agree.
So at Stardust, I believe that you guys are hiring for some roles over there.
Yes. We are predominantly hiring in engineering roles. That's also, if anybody is interested, that's also on our website, stardust.gg under the job section. But we hire constantly, and right now it's a big push for engineers. And yeah, I would have to go look exactly what the roles are, but I think it's mostly in engineering, and then I think there's a role for like head of partnerships or partnerships lead, I believe is the title of it.
Well, listeners, you heard it. Go check out stardust.gg for their job opportunities. And I mean, you're speaking so highly of the team. Why would you not want to go work over there? So to your personal experience in Web3, what are some challenges you see for women in this space?
So I think one of the first things that I didn't actually get to see and that I didn't actually notice is I'd heard how male driven the space was. And I obviously came into a very female heavy community. And I, I didn't see that side of things. And, I'll show up at events sometimes. It's like, oh, I'm one of like 10 women in this room or maybe less. And that's, I think that, making sure that we continue to create a space that women feel supported as they come into this. Because I think getting more women into the space is going to be paramount. And, it's the opportunities in this space are not just for women, but anyone really that's entering this industry really has an opportunity to build from the ground up. It's we want movers and shakers, people that are passionate, people that come from different backgrounds, because we have this, what Web3 really is, in my opinion, is that it's looking at what hasn't worked, not only from a technological standpoint, but also from a cultural standpoint. That's with the whole thing of going back to Vitalik of, centralized services owning things. And if you look at how, women and minorities have had less opportunities, this is a chance to rebuild. And very rarely in our lives do we get the chance to just rebuild something this way, and something that impacts everybody's day-to-day lives. So I think that it's going to be, important to continue to onboard women. We really, really need to have women as thought leaders in this space so that we don't, repeat what we have in Web 2 and in most of the world. Women need to be mentoring each other and encouraging each other and supporting them and growing alongside each other. But I think another thing that, as we're sort of trying to shift the narrative around this, is it can't just be that we're women in Web3. It has to be that our thoughts, our actions, the companies we're building are shifting the industry and shifting technology, regardless of our gender. And I think that that's something that's, I don't know if you were there for that panel, but we did 2 panels at NFT NYC that were all women. And
it was on Thursday, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I was there.
We didn't title them, or one of them, we didn't title anything about women. We just talked about, the industry. And one of the comments that we got from someone in the audience was like, this is the first panel I've been to that is full of women. They're not talking about being women in Web3. And that notion sort of stuck with me, where like, I do think it's important to, highlighting and talking about us being women in Web3 creates a system of support, and you hear stories. But I think if we limit ourselves to just that narrative, that, it's how are we going to enact change when we're sort of putting that label on ourselves sometimes.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. And yeah, we need to take ownership of the space as well.
Yeah. And instead, taking, I think, and everybody taking their own individual ownership and pride, and, and then it comes back down to like when you're going into a room that's all men, that you have people you can rely on and go into it with, where you guys are like linking arms and in solidarity and support. I mean, like, we've got this, we can hang here. We're have every right to be here. We're contributing just as much as anyone in this room, and just taking ownership of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'm really enjoying this opportunity to host this series because it is allowing me to connect with such great women that are doing amazing things in this space. And, the more we can network, the stronger the industry will be. But again, having strong male counterparts that are also helping to lift up the women in this space and recognizing their power in this space is really important too. So
absolutely.
I know that you are on a time crunch because you have another Twitter space coming. So I'm going to move forward to a woman in Web3 that you look up to most.
So I have 2. And I'll, Beanish, who I've mentioned before, is the VP of marketing. Just being able to work with her insight into building a lasting brand is unparalleled. It's really just an honor to get to to get to see her do her thing and get to be a part of that and get to have her, supervising me. So I feel that's definitely one. And then the second one would be Evan McMullen of disco.xyz. And she's the one that got me into the space. She is a CEO, female founder, and she is just charging through this industry and upholding the ideals that I want to see Web3 have. I see her living it every day, which is amazing to see. And so I'm listening to her. She just went head to head with Vitalik on Bankless, the podcast about. He wrote a white paper on why it was like a 39-page white paper on soulbound tokens, and she stood up to him and talked about why she didn't think that was a good idea, and she got to go on one of the top podcasts in the space. And talk about it. And so she's not afraid of having those conversations and her and yeah. So go check her out. She's amazing.
I absolutely will. I am not familiar with her. Again, I'd love to say Beanish was amazing to listen to at the panels. I have since started to follow her on Twitter, and I really encourage everyone to check her out. And follow on Twitter and stuff. And just the insights she has is incredible.
Yeah,
so
it really is.
Yeah. How about 3 crypto projects or NFT collections that you're keeping an eye on?
So I really like to, again, put my money where my mouth is and look at projects I think are doing really interesting things. And the ones that I actually like the most happen to be women backed. So I really like Meta Angels and what they're doing. I like Curious Addies. And a personal or someone that I got to meet through this whole journey was this girl called Brooklyn NFTs, and her story and her journey of how she got to what she's doing, how she's doing it. I really, really just admired that whole process. And I think her NFT collection is beautiful. I think she's launching a new one soon. But those are the 3 that I really follow.
I will definitely check out Brooklyn NFTs. As far as Meta Angels and Curious Addies, I'm in both of their Discords. And I, again, found out about them through Stardust, through one of the panels I went to.
Yes, we've done a lot with them, getting to speak with their founders and CEOs, and it's always just inspiring to hear what both of them are doing in the space with both projects.
Yeah, I really enjoyed those. So what's next for you, for Stardust? What's happening?
We are going to be at Gamescom, which is exciting. That's a game developer conference in Cologne, Germany, happening August 23rd to 26th.
Do you get to go to that?
I don't get to go to that one. And so that's the next event that we're doing. And then since we last spoke, we also launched a podcast, which is exciting. So we're kicking off. What I'm rushing to after this is I'm moderating a Twitter space on building in a bear market. And so we're doing Twitter spaces every 2 weeks, and then we're launching a new episode of our podcast every 2 weeks. So that's on top of all the writing. That's what we've been, I've been working on, and it's been really, really fun and exciting.
Oh, that's great. I'll definitely check that out. Okay, so I know you mentioned it earlier, but for anyone that joined, how do we stay apprised of your journey and or become a part of your community?
You can follow me at Bridget Hearst on Twitter. That's a good one. I'll usually keep everything that I'm doing personally up to date there. Sometimes I have clever tweets. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's just what I'm up to. And then you can also follow at Stardust and see everything that we're up to there. All the podcast launches, the Twitter Spaces announcements, everything's there. And then we'll put a lot on the, when new blog posts come out, we'll announce everything there. So you can go check it out there.
Awesome. And then just a light question to wrap it all up. Describe the rest of your life in 5 words.
Like counting on my hand. There's never a dull moment.
I love it.
No, I was like, right. It was probably expecting like characteristics of like this and this. And this was like just never boring. But
I love that.
I think that if I were to have to pick one word like that, I'd say richness. And I think that, life is about the experiences that we have and the people that we meet along the way. And you can never predict what's going to happen or where your life will go. But just being able to, you know, have rich experiences every step of the way and have like deep, meaningful relationships. And that's what I pride and value my life on. And
I love
Web3,
that.
and now I get to do that for work all the time, which, is amazing. So Web3 is definitely a big part of that.
Wow, that's so great. I love it. I actually love that last question because you always get something totally different from the last person. So it's fantastic. All right. Well, I know you need to go because you have a Twitter space. Listeners, go check it out. They'll be talking building in the bear market. Thank you again for joining me. It was
Thank
really a
you.
pleasure to reconnect.
Thank you so much for having me. And this was lovely. And thank you again for doing this. And yeah, I'm so happy that we were able to connect at NFT NYC and, you know, keep that relationship going. And here we are.
Here we are, and hopefully we'll meet in real life again someday.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks
Absolutely.
so much. I'll be tuning into your Twitter space. So, but I'm
Oh,
really excited to keep an eye on you and Stardust and see where your journey takes you. So, thanks again. And listeners, give Bridget and Stardust a follow on Twitter. Come back next Thursday, same time, to listen as I chat to Elsie Cole, a Web3 and blockchain lawyer from Miami. We'll be talking about the work she does as an attorney, but also about her volunteer work in the Web3 world. So have a great rest of your week, and thanks for tuning in.
bye.
Bye, Bridget.